Once upon a time, in the fog-kissed fjords of Norway, there lived a Viking named Ulf, a broad-shouldered warrior with tangled braids and a mighty beard that birds sometimes mistook for a nest. But there was one problem. Ulf had forgotten how to raid. It started after the great yawn of spring. A mysterious wind had swept through the village of Styrka, and with it, Ulf's thirst for plunder simply vanished. While others sharpened axes, Ulf was plucking lavender. While they trained with war cries, he practiced deep breathing, not to calm himself before battle, no, just to feel nice. Soon, Ulf stopped wearing armor altogether. He traded in his chainmail for a soft linen robe. His shield, now a wooden tray, carrying herbal teas and warm stones, softly. And that's how the very first Viking spa came to be. At first, the village was confused. What kind of warrior oils his beard with eucalyptus? Asked Eric, the elbow breaker. But curiosity is a sneaky little troll, and soon, even the fiercest warriors were sneaking into Ulf's thatched hut for one quick steam. They emerged different men, less angry, more moisturized. Some even smiled, the kind of deep, restful smile that only comes after a seaweed wrap and a neck massage, as if revealing a secret. Ulf had discovered a new kind of power, not the kind that breaks bones, but the kind that melts tension, the kind that whispers instead of roars, of Viking magic, of warmth, of rest, of healing. He called it the art of the gentle axe, breath. Let me tell you about Ulf's daily routine, because even Vikings who forget how to raid still wake with the sunrise. Each morning, Ulf would rise before dawn, not to prepare for battle, but to gather dew from spider webs. He believed morning dew held the dreams of sleeping flowers, perfect for his signature facial mist. Gentle pause, he'd wade into the fjord, the icy water lapping at his ankles, and collect smooth stones warmed by moonlight. These would become his hot stone massage collection, each one holding the memory of starlight. The village cats learned to follow him, not because he fed them fish scraps like other Vikings, but because he gave the most divine ear scratches, professional quality, 5-star relaxation. By mid-morning, smoke would curl from his chimney, but not from cooking mutton or mead. No. Ulf burned bundles of pine needles, dried rose hips, and something he called essence of contentment, which may have just been cinnamon, but smelled like pure happiness. His first customer was always Helga the Fierce, a shield maiden who could split logs with her bare hands. She'd arrive grumbling about sore shoulders from yesterday's training, and leave humming ancient lullabies, her braids adorned with tiny wildflowers. Don't tell anyone, she'd whisper to Ulf each time while booking her next appointment. As word spread, Ulf's clientele grew more interesting. There was Bjorn the Bone Crusher, who discovered he had surprisingly delicate hands, perfect for Ulf's meditation pottery class. And Astrid Stormsinger, whose war chants became spa playlist lullabies. But the real transformation happened with Magnus the Mighty, a Viking so fierce, wolves would cross rivers to avoid him. He arrived at Ulf's hut one foggy evening, demanding tribute in the traditional way, with threats and brandished weapons. Simply looked up from grinding lavender seeds and asked, "When did you last sleep well, Magnus?" The question hung in the air like morning mist. Magnus lowered his axe, and for the first time in years, admitted he couldn't remember. "Sit," Ulf said gently, patting a cushion made from the softest sheepskin. "Let me show you something more powerful than any sword." What followed was Magnus's first foot massage in 37 years, his first taste of chamomile tea, his first experience of someone humming while braiding tiny flowers into his battle-worn beard. By midnight, Magnus was fast asleep, snoring softly on a bed of moss and cloudberries, while Ulf's pet raven, Odin Jr. kept gentle watch from the rafters. Agnes woke the next morning, refreshed in a way he'd forgotten was possible. Instead of raiding, he asked Ulf to teach him how to make those little flower crowns. Word of Ulf's mysterious powers spread across the Nordic lands like ripples on still water. Soon, longships arrived, not filled with raiders, but with stressed-out Vikings seeking relief from the pressures of constant pillaging. There was the delegation of worried mothers, Viking women concerned about their sons' anger management issues. Ulf introduced them to his warrior wellness workshop, where participants learned to channel their battle rage into therapeutic wood carving. The brooding brotherhood arrived next, a group of traditionally melancholy Vikings who'd heard rumors of something called joy. Ulf taught them to weave flower crowns while sharing their feelings, revolutionary concepts in the 9th century Scandinavia. Even the legendary Ivar the Irritable made the journey, though he insisted on being rowed to shore in his personal war canoe, filled with scented cushions and a small harp for the voyage. He'd developed what he called rage to sage therapy, where warriors would arrive screaming battle cries and leave reciting poetry about butterflies. His signature treatment was the Valhalla visualization, where clients would lie on heated stones, while Ulf painted their nails with berry juice and whispered stories of peaceful meadows filled with friendly dragons who only wanted belly rubs. But perhaps his most popular offering was the midnight fjord float, where brave souls would drift on small wooden rafts, covered in soft furs and surrounded by floating candles, while underwater musicians, well, actually just Ulf with a waterproof flute, played lullabies from beneath the surface. As autumn painted the leaves gold and crimson, Ulf's spa had transformed not just individual Vikings, but entire communities. The village of Styrka became known throughout the land, not for its fierce warriors, but for its excellent produce market, community garden, and weekly poetry slams. Children who once dreamed of growing up to be fearsome raiders now aspired to become massage therapists and herbal tea specialists. The local blacksmith, Thor Ironarms, retooled his forge to create the most comfortable meditation cushions in all of Norway. Even the village's protective troll, Grumbles McGruff, who traditionally terrorized travelers crossing the local bridge, began offering complimentary back rubs and hot stone therapy to weary journeyers. One crisp morning in late October, when the fjords gleamed like polished silver, a truly formidable force arrived at Ulf's spa. The Skjelving clan, brutal, unwashed, smelling of fish and regret. They stormed onto the shore, weapons raised, war paint smeared across their faces, ready to demand tribute in the old-fashioned way. Their leader, Grim the Gruesome, had arms like tree trunks and a scowl that could sour fresh milk. But Ulf simply handed them warm towels. "Welcome, weary travelers," he said in his gentlest voice. "You look like you could use some refreshment." The raiders stood confused, weapons still raised, but those towels were exceptionally soft, and they had been at sea for 3 weeks without a proper wash. Breath, skeptical but curious, Grim the Gruesome grunted and sat down for Ulf's famous foot treatment. Within minutes, his fearsome war face began to soften, the tension melting from his shoulders like snow in spring sunshine. Softly, "What sorcery is this?" Grim whispered, as Ulf massaged peppermint oil into his calloused, battle-worn feet. "No sorcery," Ulf replied with a knowing smile. "Just the ancient art of being kind to yourself." One by one, the other raiders joined in. Soon they were all soaking their feet in wooden tubs filled with warm water and dried rose petals, humming contentedly, while Ulf's apprentices former Vikings who traded their swords for essential oil collections, braided tiny flowers into their unwashed hair by sunset. The entire Skjelving clan was stretched out on massage tables made from driftwood, receiving the full treatment: hot stone therapy, seaweed wraps, and Ulf's specialty, aromatherapy, which involved burning herbs so pleasant they made even the grumpiest warrior smile involuntarily. But the real magic happened during what Ulf called circle time, where everyone sat in a ring, sharing their feelings while passing around a talking stick carved from whalebone and decorated with tiny shells. Grim the Gruesome, whose reputation for cruelty was legendary across 3 kingdoms, broke down in tears as he shared how raiding had never really fulfilled him, how he'd always secretly wanted to learn flower arranging and maybe open a small bakery specializing in cinnamon rolls. By the time morning came, the Skjelving clan had completely forgotten their raiding mission. Instead, they were busy planning their own spa retreat back home, with Grim as head of wellness and warrior rehabilitation. They sailed away, not with stolen treasure, but with armloads of dried herbs, homemade soaps, and detailed instructions for building a proper sauna. Their war songs had transformed into gentle sea shanties about inner peace and self-care. And that's when Ulf realized he'd started something much bigger than a simple spa. He'd begun a movement, a quiet revolution of kindness, spreading across the Viking world like ripples on a still pond. Over the following months, Ulf's influence grew beyond anything he could have imagined. Former raiding parties now traveled the seas not to pillage and plunder, but to deliver care packages filled with hand-knitted scarves, homemade jam, and encouraging notes written on bark paper. The great longships that once struck terror into coastal villages now arrived bearing gifts of peace, floating spas equipped with saunas, massage tables, and libraries filled with poetry written by reformed Vikings exploring their sensitive sides. It was Captain Olaf, the formerly terrible, who'd converted his dragon-headed warship into a mobile wellness center, complete with meditation decks and an organic herb garden growing along the sides. The reformed, once the most feared shield maiden in all the northern seas, who now sailed from port to port, teaching therapeutic knitting and anger management through interpretive dance. Even the legendary Harald Hardrada, King of Norway himself, made a royal visit to Ulf's humble spa. He arrived in full ceremonial armor, expecting to meet with a fellow warrior, and left wearing a flower crown and carrying a detailed recipe for stress relief tea. The transformation wasn't limited to Vikings. News of the peaceful revolution spread to other cultures. Saxon warriors crossed the North Sea seeking Ulf's wisdom. Celtic druids made pilgrimages to learn his meditation techniques. Even Roman centurions took extended leave to attend his month-long intensive wellness retreats. Ulf's daily schedule became beautifully routine. He'd wake before dawn to the sound of his pet ravens, Odin Jr., Hugin the Hugger, and Munin the Mindful, gently cooing their morning meditations from the rafters. He'd spend the early hours foraging for the day's treatments, collecting dewdrops from spider webs for his crystal-clear facial mists, gathering smooth pebbles from the fjord for hot stone massage, and harvesting wild herbs that grew abundant in the meadows blessed by his gentle presence. By mid-morning, a steady stream of visitors would begin arriving, not customers. Ulf never thought of them that way, but fellow souls seeking the peace he discovered when he forgot how to raid. There was Eric the Enlightened, formerly Eric the Elbow Breaker, who now taught yoga classes on the beach. His signature pose was Warrior's Rest, a gentle stretching routine that helped battle-weary fighters reconnect with their inner tranquility, and Astrid, the Thoughtful, previously known as Astrid Storm Singer for her terrifying war chants, who discovered her true calling as a lullaby composer. Her songs could soothe the most troubled spirits, and were particularly effective for helping reformed raiders fall asleep during afternoon naps. Treatment methods continued to evolve. He developed memory massage, where he'd work the tension from tired muscles while clients shared stories of their past adventures, transforming tales of conquest and conflict into narratives of growth and understanding. His empathy aromatherapy sessions were legendary. Clients would lie surrounded by carefully chosen scents, each blend designed to awaken compassion and self-forgiveness, while Ulf hummed melodies that seemed to heal old wounds and soften hardened hearts. But perhaps most popular was his sunset surrender ceremony, where groups would gather at the fjord's edge each evening, release paper boats carrying their worries and regrets, and watch them float away on the gentle current while sharing wishes for peace and contentment. As winter approached, painting the landscape in shades of silver and white, Ulf prepared for the season's special offerings. His hibernation healing program helped Vikings embrace the slower pace of winter, learning to find joy in simple pleasures like warm fires, good stories, and long naps under soft furs. Gentle Pause, the spa's great hall, once a traditional Viking feast hall where warriors boasted of battles and conquests, had been transformed into a serene sanctuary. Tapestries depicting gentle scenes of nature replaced weapons on the walls. Comfortable cushions and soft throws created cozy corners for reflection and quiet conversation. Even the long winter nights became opportunities for healing. Ulf would host storytelling for the soul gatherings, where former raiders would share tales not of their fiercest battles, but of their kindest moments, their most gentle victories, the times they chose compassion over conquest. And then came the spring, when the first wildflowers pushed through the melting snow, and something magical happened. Visitors began arriving not just from across the Nordic lands, but from distant kingdoms no Viking had ever raided. Word of Ulf's peaceful revolution had spread across all of Europe, carried by merchants, monks, and migrating birds who seemed to sense the special energy surrounding his little spa village. A delegation of knights from England arrived, still wearing their heavy armor but carrying bouquets of flowers instead of weapons. They'd heard rumors of a place where warriors could lay down their swords without losing their honor, and they'd traveled hundreds of miles to experience it themselves. French troubadours made the journey, hoping to learn Ulf's legendary lullabies. Italian merchants came seeking his famous stress relief oils. Even Byzantine scholars arrived, documenting his revolutionary approaches to conflict resolution through radical self-care. Welcomed them all with the same gentle warmth he'd shown his first nervous Viking customers. He'd learned that beneath every warrior's armor, behind every aggressor's anger, lived a heart longing for peace. His methods remained beautifully simple: a warm welcome, a comfortable place to rest, someone willing to listen without judgment, and the revolutionary idea that strength could be found in softness. That true victory meant conquering one's own inner storms. Years passed like gentle seasons, each one bringing new growth to Ulf's vision of a more peaceful world. His small spa had become a movement. His quiet revolution had touched countless lives. But he remained the same humble Viking who'd simply forgotten how to raid and remembered how to heal. Softly, On quiet evenings, when the last client had departed and the fjord reflected the sunset like polished copper, Ulf would sit on his favorite driftwood log, watching the water and marveling at how much had changed since that first morning he'd chosen lavender over looting. Gentle pause. His pet ravens would perch beside him, Odin Jr. preening his feathers while humming one of Astrid's lullabies, Hugin, the hugger, nuzzling against Ulf's shoulder in a gentle bird embrace, and Munin, the mindful, meditating in peaceful silence. Sometimes old friends would visit, former members of his original raiding party who'd gone on to spread the message of warrior wellness to distant lands. They'd share stories of the peaceful villages they'd founded, the meditation gardens they'd planted, the lullaby libraries they'd established in converted armories. And sometimes, on the quietest nights when the northern lights danced green and gold across the sky, Ulf would remember his old life as a traditional Viking warrior. But instead of missing the excitement of raids and battles, he felt only gratitude for the mysterious wind that had blown away his appetite for conquest and replaced it with something infinitely more satisfying: the ability to heal, the power to bring peace, the strength that comes from choosing gentleness over aggression, compassion over conquest, love over, well, looting. As our story draws to a close, like a gentle tide receding to reveal treasures on the shore, let's visit Ulf one more time. It's a perfect summer evening, the kind where the sun takes hours to set, painting the fjord in shades of gold and lavender. Ulf has just finished his final appointment of the day, a group session for visiting merchants who'd been suffering from road travel stress. They left carrying jars of his homemade tension relief balm and humming his signature relaxation tune. Now he sits by the water's edge, his faithful ravens nearby, watching the last light dance on the gentle waves. In the distance, a longship approaches, but there's no alarm, no call to arms, just curious anticipation. The ship's dragon head has been replaced with the carved swan. Its sail bears not the symbol of any raiding clan, but an emblem of a flower, the universal sign that these travelers come in peace, seeking the healing that Ulf's village has become famous for providing. As the ship draws closer, Ulf can hear something beautiful floating across the water. The crew is singing, not a war song or battle chant, but a gentle melody about coming home, about finding rest, about warriors who learned that the greatest victory is the one that brings peace to your own heart. Not the battles he never fought, not the treasures he never stole, but the peace he helped create, the gentleness he taught, the simple revolutionary idea that warriors could choose healing over hurting, that strength could be found in softness, that the mightiest victory was helping others find rest. And so, if you ever find yourself along the Nordic coast, when the evening mist rises from the water like gentle spirits, and the wind carries the faint scent of lavender and wood smoke, you might be near the place where Ulf built his spa. The original buildings may have weathered away, returned to the earth like all things do, but the peace remains. The stones still hold warmth from countless hot stone massages. The moss still remembers the feeling of weary warriors finally learning to rest. The ravens still carry lullabies in their wings. And if you listen very carefully, on the quietest nights when the northern lights dance, you might still hear the echo of Ulf's gentle voice, welcoming tired souls to lay down their burdens, reminding restless hearts that true strength comes from kindness, that the greatest warriors are those who choose to heal rather than harm. So rest now, gentle listener. Let Ulf's story settle over you like the softest fur, like warm stones on tired muscles, like the peaceful satisfaction that comes from choosing compassion over conquest. May your dreams be filled with lavender-scented breezes, with the sound of friendly ravens humming lullabies, with the deep contentment that comes from knowing that sometimes the greatest adventure is simply learning how to be at peace. Good night, little warrior. May your dreams be spa-worthy, scented and slow. Let it remind you that you don't have to raise a sword to be strong. Sometimes, putting the sword down is the bravest thing you'll ever do. Pause. Close your eyes now. Imagine the fjord. The candlelit rafts drifting quietly into the mist. The smell of pine and lavender wrapping around your shoulders like a woven cloak. The ravens are singing. Ulf is humming softly nearby, and peace, the kind that hugs your bones, has finally found you. More softness, more strength, more stories where warriors choose warmth. Soft fade